Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, a mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the podcast. And this episode is a totally different, weird kind of episode. I've never done this before. I'm not even going to have a confession with you. Okay, maybe that counts as my confession. I never did this kind of podcast before. But today, instead of you just listening to me drone on in your ears and lull you to sleep with my boring parenting advice, no, I'm just kidding. I have a client of mine here joining me. Her name is Allie, and she is in my group program. And just last week, you're seeing me flying by the seat of my pants here. Just last week, we had a group call where Allie was telling us some of the great things that she has created in her family. And the more she talked, the more I was like, I can't explain this better than this. Sometimes people really need to understand how this work transforms you and what the actual experience of it is straight from the horse's mouth. And there's nothing I could do to improve on what Allie shared in our group call. And so she has generously offered to chat with us here today. And then she also generously gave me permission to share the snippet from our group call where she was getting coached. And it is beautiful. And so, welcome, Allie. Thank you so much for being here.
You're so welcome. Hello, I'm happy to be here.
It's so exciting. And so where we were just talking before we pushed record about how it's like, oh, this is kind of weird. We're going to do our best. One thing you're going to hear when you listen to the recording of the group call is that it is not done with, we weren't all mic'd up with headphones and cans and all that good stuff. And also, Zoom has this tendency to cut off one talker in favor of another talker. So it sounds like we were interrupting each other a lot. Whereas really, the truth is that most of the time we were just saying, yeah, totally, I agree. So forgiveness for the zoominess of the recording, but the content feels so important and so powerful that it's totally worth it. What do you think about that, Allie? How do you feel about my opinion?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Whenever we're on our calls and I say something, then you kind of get muted and you have to, catch up to those last few words. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I think it was a really great call. And what you're going to hear, I want you to listener, pay attention to a couple of the very specific changes that Allie mentions that she made. And then also just the global shift in mindset that she expresses. I think it's so powerful. And Allie, I just want to give you a chance to speak for yourself here and just say, like, what is that global mindset shift that you had?
Yeah, I mean, the for me, the biggest thing that I have changed is just noticing how I show up with my kids and not only with my kids, but with my husband, really just in the home is is the main, I guess, culprit of our my issues. And so that's kind of what I have noticed the most is just for me being calm and just showing up in a way with my kids that was different than what I was doing in the past, and really just noticing that a lot of the problems or the issues that I was seeing in the home with whether it was one child or two child really was kind of me. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what you'll hear in the call. I likened it to the Taylor Swift song Anti-Hero, but it is, and that's the biggest thing that I've noticed is that without being critical or hard on myself, I have really noticed that I'm a lot of the problem. And
Mm-hmm.
just changing that mindset rather than saying it's her or it's the behaviors that she's presenting that need to change. It's really me that has needed to change.
Right. And I really want to hone in on what you said without being too critical on myself. What does that mean for you? This juxtaposition of recognizing that you are maybe the source of these challenges that you're experiencing, but not turning that against yourself. What does that mean for you?
For me, just in the past and historically, I have a history of being super hard on myself, trying to have everything look perfect, be perfect, say the perfect things that the perfect mom should say. And I have really had to let a lot of that go and recognize that this is hard. Being a parent of a child, multiple children is hard, and we're not going to get it right every time, and that's okay. I think I recognize that it is a work in progress, and with me putting the work in, which really was joining your group, that was a big step for me. I recognize that I'm doing the work, and I'm not going to be perfect, but it has definitely made a huge difference. So
Yeah, I love hearing that. And I just to build on what you were saying, something popped into my head while you were talking is like when we decide to recognize that we are the crux of the situation without criticizing ourselves, now we find a lot of power and opportunity. Like, oh, cool. If I'm the crux, that means that I can change and that will change the situation. Like, that's actually can be this really empowering and freeing experience. Cause I think a lot of times in parenting, we feel super trapped and stuck and disempowered, realizing without self criticism our power and our sort of like influence over the situation is a total about face. It's a big 180 for a lot of people.
that's right. And, I was just thinking, I'm also a kind of, I don't want to say control freak, but I have a strong need for control. And I think that was, or that is, one of my hardships with parenting is was feeling like I need to control her. I need to change her behavior, where that wasn't my control. I had no control over
Mm-hmm.
how she was going to respond to something or say something. But what I was in control of is myself. And exactly, that is very empowering.
Yes. Oh, and I also want to point out, I keep hearing you say her, which I think is a very important point for a lot of people out there. A lot of people join my group because they have one. So Allie has several children. She had one child that she was feeling I really need help with this particular child. And what I think is so cool, and I see it happen almost every single time, is things start to improve with that one kiddo. And we start using these tools and having questions and getting coaching around the kids that we didn't even think we needed to invest in support
Mhm.
for.
That's right. Exactly. Absolutely.
And there's a second half to our coaching time together that I cut out because it was much more just like coaching on specific problems and not talking about this like global change. But we wound up spending the rest of the time coaching on your son
Right.
who isn't even the person that you thought you would be hiring a coach to help you with. So, I mean, if you're out there thinking, oh, I just have this one problem child or whatever, which of course we would never say that to our kids that they're the
Right.
problem child, but let's be honest, it's there in our heads. If you're out there thinking that, you probably will find if you decide that you to undertake this work that all of these things start to apply to everybody in the family and you start really starting to use these tools on everyone, not just with that one quote unquote challenging kiddo.
That's right. And like you said, I mean, and it doesn't have to be, yes, you might have this one child who has these particular problems, but what I have just found so helpful from the group, it can be anything just as mundane as, getting the kid dressed and in the car and to school in a peaceful and calm way, that feels comfortable, to how do I address biting now with my 1.5 year old? And can I start disciplining at that age? And so, I mean, it has just, like you said, just covered the gamut, and things pop up that you didn't think you would need help with. And it's just such a great support.
Yeah, I love hearing you say that. What's your experience? This is just for my own curiosity. I always want to ask, what's your experience of being in a group versus being one on one? Like, I know that you and I haven't done one on one work, but what were your expectations around being in a group? And then what has it been actually like to be in a group setting?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. We haven't talked about this, but I was a little hesitant about the group setting because I was imagining, like, virtually everybody in a circle kind of talking about, this is going on with me, and how would you handle this? Almost like, um, not just speaking with you directly, but we would actually speak, with the other members of the group. And where everybody is on the call, what I have been, pleasantly surprised and have enjoyed is it's really one-on-one coaching. I mean, you are speaking to me now, you can see the other group members, and it's nice to see some nodding sometimes, or when somebody else then talks, they might say, oh, that really applied to me. And so that you get the feel of support from the group, but it's very much one-on-one coaching with you, which I was surprised and happy to experience.
I love that. And how is it for you when other people are getting coached? What's your experience of that process?
I am interested to hear what people have to say, especially not only when it's a child my age, which oftentimes, it's somebody older, and it's really great. Even if you're coaching a parent of an 18-year-old who's dealing with completely different things than maybe my 3-year-old is, there are a lot of parallels. And I think that is, again, just comes back full circle to when we are taking care of ourselves, coaching ourselves, in terms of self-care and maybe what we need to be doing, how we need to be showing up differently, it applies, doesn't matter the age.
I love that. And I think what I've noticed almost always is whoever's getting coached first, then the second person always like, wow, I resonated with what you just said to that first person. So
Yes.
it really, even though you're totally right, Allie, like I am your coach, the other people in the group are not your coach. And they often will say things like, oh, I totally resonate with what you're saying. Or we might have in the chat field people chiming in and saying, I have the same problem or whatever. So you have that feeling of sisterhood or camaraderie. Even though that is the case where I'm really the leader of each interaction and coaching through that interaction, it still has the energy of being like this global conversation that we've had together, because so many of the sort of topics are sort of woven throughout everything, and there seems always to be some sort of a common thread between all the calls.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
One other thing I wanted to ask you about is, how did you decide? How did you find me? How did you decide to go through the process of, well, first of all, setting up a discovery call for yourself? And then after the discovery call, how was that process for you and actually finally ultimately deciding to go for it?
Mm-hmm. So I found you. Well, I didn't actually find you. A friend of mine came across one of your podcasts, and I think she had listened to it for her own benefit. And we'd been sharing podcasts back and forth. And so she sent me your podcast, and I listened to it. It's pretty much as soon as she sent it, and it just resonated so much with you, not on or with me, not only you, the way that you presented the information, just very matter of factly, and I enjoyed your humor, but the information, I just found myself like nodding, like, yeah, oh, that's, just agreeing with everything. And I just found it to be so useful. And so I, heard at the end your little line about, it doesn't have to stop here. You can book a discovery call with me. And so I immediately went on your website and booked it. And so, yeah, that's how we got to our discovery call. And when we had our chat, again, I was kind of expecting like a little 5-10 minute, like, this is what I'm dealing with, can you help me kind of thing. But we were on the call for like 90 minutes. I think it was like an hour and a half. And I just left that call feeling so intrigued and so excited, and very much like, this is the change, this is the tool that I am needing to implement change in my family. And so we had that, and then I just kind of started waffling. And as you know, I think you reached out to me a few days later just to say kind of, I enjoyed chatting and kind of where we were at. And I think for me, my biggest hesitancy, and I'm probably not the only parent, this had been my issues, I guess, with this one particular child had been going on for the better part of a year. And I had already put not a significant amount of money, but, some amount of money into different parenting workshops, parenting things, and nothing had worked. And so that was really my biggest hesitancy is I've tried all these other things. How is this going to be different?
Yeah, I
And
think that's a really reasonable thing to wonder. And I think that's true for all of us. Like when we come to something like coaching, this isn't the first thing that we've tried. Like all of us have at least read a book or listened to a podcast or, read a blog or something and maybe tried to apply it and felt like, okay, well, that was cool, but didn't really work. Things don't feel that whole much difference. Like I feel there's like sort of like an outer layer of cynicism that we build up over time the longer we are working on a specific challenge without getting where we want to go. And it's really understandable for people to be kind of like, I don't know about this, but what I am so curious about, and I think there's a lot of people out there, and I was telling Allie when we first chatted about the possibility of creating this podcast episode, I was like, it was a really good learning experience for me of how to support and coach and hold space for someone while they're making a decision. Because for me, I am a very like pull the trigger kind of person. I don't hesitate in making decisions at all. So that feeling that you described, Allie, of like, this was amazing. I got exactly what I wanted out of this call. I feel so enthusiastic. This is what I need. Like, I do not pass go. As soon as I have that feeling, I'm like, done. And I literally would do it like within 5 minutes or something. So it's a very different experience for me. It's a different mindset, a different thought process to really like shepherd somebody through this big decision and helping them really feel supported and giving them permission, almost like that, feel that they have the right to be thorough and take their time and all of those things. So I would love to hear from you, Allie, like what was your process in finally making that decision? And I think this applies to everything. This is not just about deciding whether or not to join a coaching group. These ways of being are universal. I'm sure that you experience these feelings and this process not just when you were deciding whether or not to work with me. And so I think helping people understand the process that you go through is really helpful for anyone who has a big decision to make right now.
mm-hmm. Yes, a number of things kind of went into my decision making. I think one, like after I was so enthusiastic, I was so gung ho, I was ready to, jump on it. And then a couple of things in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, if it's just me and I'm, it's a mom's group, so I'm on the call, but what about my husband? And don't we have to be on the same page? And, he can't stand it when I try to teach him something, it never goes well. And so that was one question I brought to you. And it was very eye opening because I had never thought that this was the case. But, you had talked about how we really didn't need to be on the same page. And just by me modeling what I'm learning and by me applying what I'm learning, then he may see like, wow, this is really working. And maybe he'll jump on board or maybe not. And that's okay.
Yeah, I think
So,
that's a really, really common worry and concern. And I think that's probably one of the things that differentiates me from a lot of parenting professionals out there is this, once again, permission, so to speak, to release that idea that you have to go hand in hand into the fray with your co-parent. If you can do that, if you really feel that between the two of you, great, good for you guys. But if you don't, which is true for so many parents, we can't let that stop us from learning the skills and showing up in the relationships with our children the way that we want to. Because then this like discord that we feel between us and our co-parent becomes the excuse we use not to level up our parenting. And the truth is that nothing stops us from being the parent we want to be for our children. And so I think as you described, Allie, when I tell parents this, a lot of times you can almost just see this load, as the weight is lifted off of them. Cause it's like, okay, fine. I have enough fish to fry with my own work, let alone dragging this other person kicking and screaming across the finish line. I'm
right.
really glad I can just put that part down and work on my own progress.
That's right. Exactly. That's exactly how I felt. And it was extremely empowering and just a huge relief that I could be in control of this. And if one of us was, then that was fine. And so, the other thing that I kept thinking, well, maybe she'll grow out of this. Maybe this is just a phase. And so maybe I just need to give it a little bit more time, even though it had literally already been over a year that we had been dealing with this, which obviously it didn't change, which again just speaks to the fact that the way that I was showing up with her and with my other older daughter as well, just that was really driving a lot of the behaviors that I was seeing. And so I think that was obvious to me that this isn't just her. A lot of it is me. And I knew that. I mean, I wasn't just naive and thinking like, oh, it's just her and I'm a perfect parent. I knew that, that the way that it was being handled was not, and it just didn't feel right. And the other piece, like you mentioned before, you kept checking in, and it wasn't like in an annoying way, like, have you made a decision? But it was almost like you were holding me accountable for something that I had shown interest in. And that was the key piece that was different than the other things that I had tried, because there was no accountability. It was just, oh, you buy this workshop and you go through it at your own pace, and there's nobody to chat with, or no accountability. And so that really was a shift for me. And like, she really is in my court, and she's really there to coach me, and I don't have to do this alone. And I do, you show up more consistently, because you almost feel like, you're not expecting it. Of course you can miss calls and things, but it's just like, it's an accountability piece.
I think that is huge. I feel like that's one of the biggest differences. I remember you, speaking of holding people accountable, I feel like you held me accountable, because I
Yeah.
remember you sent me an email saying like, how is this going to be different than any of the other things that I
Yeah.
tried in the past? And I was like, okay, I got to bring it here. And so I should. And so I feel, and that was one of the things that I said to you was like, my understanding is that this is the first time you're considering signing up for something where you're actually having a dialogue and a live interaction with a coach, versus buying something that you are passively meant to figure out on your own with these materials that you've purchased. And I do think that's a massive difference, that piece of the puzzle where you don't feel alone, you do feel accountability, and that someone actually cares about you, and it, like you said, is in your corner. I love that you have that feeling. It's always so gratifying to know that, like, okay, the message I'm trying to send is actually being received just as I meant for it to be received. It's just so wonderful. And I think what I want everyone to tune into when they're listening to this snippet from our group call is how you really addressed. You don't even know that you did this, Allie, but I went back and listened to it, and like with my coaching lens on, was like listening to, oh, it's so fascinating because you mentioned, so when you very first start working with me in the very beginning of my workbook, there's this little image that kind of shows like 3 arenas that we're working in when we do this coaching work. One is the parenting skill set. The other is the mindset and your own self work. And the third is the kind of like time management, family management, executive functioning piece of the puzzle. And you mentioned that you had made changes and created results in all 3 of those areas, because you talked about your own mindset stuff about relaxing around perfection and owning your stuff. That is perfect. You also talked about some of your parenting skills, because you mentioned using the uh-oh song and all of these things. That's a skill set piece. And you mentioned the time management piece, because you have chosen in the last couple of weeks to give yourself a few days a week where you have a couple of hours with no kids and time to yourself. And that structural change to your routine has, I think, kind of been like the bow, like the final bow that brought it all together, everything that you were learning. So I just loved how it was like, oh my gosh, this is like, you are implementing the system perfectly. And the other thing that's really cool is you have only been in the group for 3 months. Like, this is not after years and years and years of work. You came into the group in August, you dove in head first, you show up consistently. And like you said, not every single week. Absolutely not. Of course not. But you're taking it seriously and you are completely transforming. And the thing that almost brought me to tears during the call and then re-listening to it also was your description of the dynamic between you and your daughter that is just so attuned, so connected, and you truly have a connected, healthy relationship with her that is just magical. And it wasn't that way in the beginning, and I'm just so happy for you. And that to me is like that's that like almost ineffable, indescribable piece of this work that's like, yes, it's about behavior, yes, it's about helping our families run more peacefully and all of that stuff, but beyond all of that, it's about this human connection between
Mm-hmm.
a parent and a child that is, it's sacred, it is magical, it is transcendent, and it is so, so beautiful to see. So I'm just so happy for you, Allie. And last thing I'll ask you before we go into the call recording is, what would you say to anyone who's on the fence about setting up this free discovery call and just checking it out?
I mean, I think this, kind of speaks for itself just with the recording, but I would say if you're on the fence and kind of waffling like me, reach out to Anne and she will hook you up with a mom or two who you could chat with about their experience, which I know was a big part of my decision. And that was really like, talk about like the bow that sealed it for me was really getting to speak with somebody who had been in the group and had the experience that I'm now having. And I would just say, this is so different. If you've tried many other things, this is just, I was in that boat. I had felt like I tried everything. I, was ready to just throw in the towel and say, this is just the way that it's going to be. And it has been a game changer for me. It has been so different. And just briefly, that connection piece that you spoke of is just so true. I mean, my daughter is just turned 4, so she basically has been 3 throughout all this, and she is such a beautiful, amazing little girl. But I was literally just at the point that I signed her up for school 5 days a week because I love her to death, but I just could not figure her out. And our relationship and just everything was just tanking. It just felt so difficult. But now that feel like I have a better grasp on myself and her and everything, things have changed so much that I actually want to be around her. And I know that might sound hard and sad, but I do. She's just a wonderful child, and our connection has, I mean, grown immeasurably. And so I would just say, go for it. If you're on the fence, it makes all the difference.
Oh, Allie, you're just making me glow up over here. And I remember actually when you maybe like a couple months ago asked a question. It was like, is it hurting my kid that we're not spending all this time together? And I think my answer at the time was like, the bottom line is this is what you need. And by giving yourself what you need and doing this work, you have the potential to get to a place where you don't need it as much anymore. And that's exactly what you're describing. So if what your daughter needs is to have more time with you, but right now you simply cannot give it to her because you are, just depleted or exhausted, or she's triggering you or whatever, it is what it is. And when you honor that and take care of it, over time now you don't need it anymore, which means you have more time that's available to her, which means she's getting more of what she needs from you. And it's like this like domino snowball effect in a positive direction. That's just so beautiful to see. I'm just so happy for you. And I really hope that our conversation just now and the recorded snippet from the group call is a source of inspiration and hope for all parents out there. This change is possible. That beautiful overarching connection that's the true, North Star that we're working towards as parents is out there waiting for you, whether it happens by you doing this work or joining my group or doing the work in a different way or whatever. It's almost irrelevant. What's most important is that that it better is possible and that you don't have to do it alone.
That's right. Yes, Anne. And I just thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Allie. And I hope everybody, with all of that being said, here is the recording, and I hope you have an excellent week. Bye, everybody.
What is happening in your life?
It has been going a lot better. It's amazing what a little bit of time to yourself to just be yourself will do to you. It's like, wow, there's just space to breathe again.
Yes, I love that for you. I was hoping
Yeah.
that's what you would say. I'm so happy for you. That's
Yes. Oh, thank you. Me too. It's gone really well, and I think yes, it's been good for everybody, not just me, but Bodhi as well. I think he's kind of starting to like get the gist of, okay, like, she's not going to be gone forever and it's fine. And yeah, so it's good. I know. It's been really good. So we've had a couple sickness, cancellations, but for the most part, it's gone well. And so so yeah, that's been good, and just so eye-opening. And I think I had already touched on this when you and I did our discovery call, but like it reminds me so much of that Taylor Swift song. Hi, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me.
aw.
it, it's me. I mean, let's just be honest.
Yep, it is. I know. Sorry. Spoiler alert.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
So it is. But it's good. It's good. Just yeah, it's all been going really well. And I feel like just it's funny. One thing I've been noticing with Maya, because I've been really doing the uh-oh song with her. If I just do the uh-oh and like I say it in the same way every time, she just goes, no, like she knows what's happening. So it's kind of funny. That's all I have to say sometimes. And
Well, I hear that all the time. The first time that happened to me was like my eldest was maybe like 3 years old or something, and we were at a play date and it was time to go. And I said, Elijah, it's time to go. We need to put our shoes on. And he ignored me. And I said, uh-oh. And I didn't even finish saying it. And he like ran to his shoes.
yeah.
All the other moms were like, what the fuck just happened? That was me telling you guys.
Seriously, it's so true. It's so true. And just like the consistency of it. And yeah, it's really been a game changer, honestly. And I also have been owning my own, like when I am not showing up in a nice way with my kids, like I've really been doing a good job of owning it, and which is, been good, and it's also been happening less frequently. But like just the other day, or maybe it was even this morning, I can't remember, but I said something to Maya in a not a nice way, and she was just like, that was a really mean way to say that, mom. Like she just, just kind of like said it. She didn't like throw a fit, but I was like, you're right, that was not, I was like, let me have a do-over. So it's just been kind of cool to see, like, as I've been growing and changing, like she especially, because it's mostly with her, she's really been picking up on what I've been working on. And rather than when I would get mean or say something mean or get mad, it would just it would send her over the edge and tantrum and whatever. But now it's like she's able to, it's almost like rather than doing that, she's like recognizing what I'm doing and calling me out on it, if that makes sense.
But I mean, I want to stop you there because, especially for anyone listening to the replay, I really want to underscore this for everybody. Like, what's happening is by you owning your stuff, you're equipping your child with knowledge about what is okay for them to expect, what's not okay, what's okay treatment, what's not okay treatment. You're giving her the language and the perspective that allows her to, let's be honest, like be quote unquote mistreated and not have it send her into the stratosphere, because we all mistreat our kids sometimes. We can't always be kind and caring 24/7. We make mistakes. But what happens in most families is we mistreat our children. We don't make the repair. So not only did we mistreat our children, we gaslit them too, because they don't, on top of the fact that they're receiving that mistreatment, they're not like, they're in this like Twilight Zone experience of like, that didn't feel good, but I guess that's normal because that's how I get treated all the time. And nobody says anything about it being wrong. So like, and so no wonder kids have no capacity to cope with things when they're not done, quote unquote, right. They get dysregulated. Like you said, they just go off in tantrum just because you've lost your temper. There's nothing else for them to do. They just become totally dysregulated and freak out. So what you've done by choosing to, own your mistakes and do the repair is you're also giving yourself a buffer zone of like, I can screw up and it's not like destroying my child.
Yes.
Child, instead of decompensating, can say, Mom, that wasn't cool what you just did. She's empowered now.
Right.
Now gives you this like, this like, yeah, like this space to be human and not have to be perfect all the time.
Right. Exactly. And like you said, like it empowers her. And even though she's 4 now, but like, even though she's only 4 or 3, she's able to say that, no, I guess like she feels safe now because I think she recognizes that I am in a more stable, I guess, place. And so she feels safe to say, hey, that wasn't very cool. And then and I'm not going to blow up, then we're not just like yelling back and forth at each other. So
I mean, everything you're saying is spot on. Like, not only are you giving her these tools and telling her, this is what you actually have a right to be treated like, but also, like you're saying, you're creating emotional safety in your relationship with her so that she is able to express herself, stand up for herself, hold boundaries with you even. Like this, like, how old is she? Tell us again.
She just turned 4.
So we're talking about a 4-year-old that is like,
yeah,
tapping into her potential for emotional health that most adults don't have. And it's all because you are taking care, like you said, I'm the problem. Like you're taking care of yourself and you're showing up differently. Just a fucking apologizing has like unlocked amazing universe for your daughter.
Yeah.
Ellie, I want you to like
think
about who you were 6 months ago and who you are today. Like this is just tremendous.
I know.
Tremendous.
It is. And it feels big. I mean, maybe to some people like it might seem small, but it feels really big to me. Like just to be able to show up in this better way. And again, not being perfect, but when I do mess up, which I still do, like being able to recognize it and stop it there rather than just continue on.
Yeah, like double.
Oh, well, exactly. I've already yelled, so I may as well just turn into a monster or whatever.
Well, but I also think what's really cool is like before, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I think this is true for you. Before one of the reasons why you would like quote unquote turn into this monster is because you were trying to be perfect. You were trying to like have your house be perfect and your kids' behavior be perfect and your vibe with them be perfect and all this stuff. And it was just like this rigid, like exigency on yourself that was never going to work and was going to crack. And now it's like you're never going to be perfect. No one's going to be perfect, but you're a hell of a lot closer to that perfection goal that you were setting for yourself by allowing yourself to be imperfect, by allowing yourself to screw up, by saying you're sorry, by making repair, by like, I mean, all these things that you're doing for yourself, even like getting yourself a babysitter. You don't have to be on 24/7. And
yes.
So I think I'm actually in the midst of writing an email about this right now that's going to go out in a few weeks. That's like basically like instead of trying to fix yourself all of the time, what if you embrace the fact that you have these challenges, that these are all a part of you? You can't get rid of them. They are you. And the more that you actually do that, the closer to this, person that you're trying to be, you actually become.
Right. Yes.
Paradoxical.
Yeah, it is. It's so true. I mean, yeah, everything you just said is spot on. I mean, there's so many things that I have had to let go of, like the house being perfect, having this, whatever image in my mind of what I thought it should look like and the way that I thought like my kids' hair should be and their clothes should look. And, just having to say, you know what, those things, they don't really matter. And rather than, do the pile of dishes that are in the sink, I'm going to sit and play with my kid for 15 minutes because that actually matters more. And that's going to give me the behaviors that I really want to see later on. And so it's pretty, yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
You're like a tremendous success story.
Yeah.
I mean, you've really only been in the group for a few months.
I know. Yes. And I mean, there's still so many like stages to go through, but yes, it does. It feels like a success story already. So thank you.
Hey, oh my gosh. That you came on, even if it was just to celebrate and share what you.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. I feel really anxious and excited for how this episode will be received by you, the listener. Different than anything I've put together before, but I sincerely hope that overall what it leaves you with is a feeling of hopefulness and inspiration that these changes are possible. They don't have to come on the backs of years and years and years and years of work necessarily. And that, it doesn't have to be a slog. It doesn't have to be a gauntlet. It doesn't have to be excruciating, and you don't have to do it alone. It is so enlivening for me personally to know that when I am undertaking something challenging, that I am doing so in a community, and that I can see the fruits of my labor. It's no fun doing work and just not seeing any return and not seeing any momentum and things like that. And so I really, really hope that you are able to sort of vicariously feel that energy through me and Allie today. And if you really are thinking, I'm so excited about this, or this sounds right for me, or I'm just really curious about it, it's not too late for you to take advantage of the Black Friday special that I've been offering for the whole month of December. So technically it should be Black December, I guess, deal. But for anybody who enrolls with me in December, you are going to receive a tremendous reduction in your enrollment fee, $500 reduction in your enrollment fee, which is a lot. So I hope that's exciting for you. If you are feeling that, don't hesitate to set up that discovery call that we talked about, that you hear me talk about every week. And I will see you all again next week. Bye, everybody.
The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.